Welcome, everyone. It's a beautiful evening outside. After a long time, we have had cooler weather. Couldn't be happier. So today, I'm going to talk to you about something that impacts us all in some way or the other. What do you think that keyword is? Social media being one, data being another one. And before I begin, I also wanted to welcome some very special guests from Germany and Leipzig and Hong Kong. Is that right? So, welcome to OU. Thank you. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump in. But before I begin my presentation, this is a presentation in which everybody's involved. So, we're going to make this a fun activity. You can take out your cell phones or smartphones. You can take out your laptops if you have them here. This is our hashtag for tonight, Café OU Con. And there's a reason I put not OU TED here, because I want you to learn the difference between KAHN, which is a German variant, and KHAN. I am Con, KHAN. So please get that right, otherwise we will not have that beautiful visualization at the end that I'm expecting everybody to see. Also, this is my Twitter handle. You're welcome to follow me, connect with me, and then we can engage in this activity all together. So, we live in a data-driven world. I'm sure I have a feeling not many people are going to disagree with that. You look around you. Obviously, you're not going to see those zeros and ones and datas in the air, but it is all around us. The very fact that this is going to be online, the very fact that you're part of this conversation via social media, and I'm trying to get that involvement and engagement, is because we are living in a data-driven world. Data is constantly being generated in just about every activity we do. One small example, which is kind of creepy at the same time, we're having surveillance cameras in different places. In some countries, this is an issue which is kind of problematic because it's a privacy issue, such as in China, algorithmic surveillance, face recognition. This has become a big topic of discussion in the research world. So from smartphone data to sensor level data, we are having lots of data being generated. So much so that when I wanted to explain this, I thought, what better picture than the Niagara Falls? The beauty and the speed and how much water we have in that, you can think of these as the major big data challenges. Volume. There's so much data that we do not know how to deal with it. Velocity. It's so fast. It's coming automatically all the time. Variety. There is so much language variation, types and types of data. And then we also live in the age of misinformation. And I'm sorry I have to say that, but we have a lot of misinformation, fake profiles, simply speaking, a lot of junk online that we have to deal with. So these are some challenges that are very important to understand. So data overload is indeed a problem, but we can deal with data overload only when we have smarter social analytics, especially if we are concerned about the social world. And what do we mean by smarter social analytics? Well, I'll come to that in a minute, but first, it's very important to understand, and that was also the title of my presentation today, we are also living in a competitive world. Just about every entity, organization is surviving and thriving and competing in different fields. Be it governments, they need to engage with their citizens. Be it a for-profit organization, they have to compete against other entities. Be it nonprofit, they have to compete for dollars, right? So there is constant competition. But data can help us compete better. If we do not use data to our advantage, that could literally mean the end of that entity. So competing social brands, let's just look at some examples and see the intensity of this. Katy Perry. Many people know who Katy Perry is. 106.9 million Twitter followers, and that's just one social platform. When you think of sports, NBA and that's the Twitter handle. You can use that to tweet about it. 28.8 million Facebook fans. And before I go ahead, I forgot to mention, I have these two $10 gift cards. So as I mentioned at the end, we have this social analytics activity. I highly, highly encourage you to tweet. The person who tweets the most with that hashtag, Café Ohioans, and mentions me, I'm going to give that card to him or her. So who's the lucky person? So we do not only have t-shirts or coffee, we also have gift cards. So they're right here. Let the tweeting begin. If we look at city brands, Dubai, the city of Dubai is, you know how highly watched it is? They have a promotional campaign, 605 million YouTube views for that brand. And you know what's interesting about that brand? I love it. It's 2 languages in one. How beautiful is that? So if you read it from this side, it's Dubai. If you read it from that side in purple or red, that's in Arabic. Tesla, one of my favorite brands, 2.9 million Twitter followers. So you can see, you get the picture. Everybody is on social media, especially if they want to compete in this digital world. So what do we want to gain out of this competition? What is it that we really want? Well, you heard about the 4 V's. Volume of data, velocity of data, variety of data, and the 4th one was? Veracity of data. And we have a 5th one. This is what we really want from all those 4 V's. We want value from that data. And extracting value from data is not an easy endeavor. It's hard. It's challenging because of all the issues we have. But that's not where we stop. We move ahead and we foster change. And that's where a lot of the problem lies as well. There are organizations that do not know what to do. And I'll give you proof of that. There are organizations who really are doing analytics, but they do not take it a step ahead. They need to be able to foster change. If you cannot change for the better, what's the point of all this data? So stories can help us. We have to be able to tell good stories. Human beings naturally love stories. We love stories, right? So a story, as you all know, is an ordered sequence of events. There's a lot in data storytelling than the eye can see. Because we want to do what at the end of the day? To persuade people to change, we have to give them numbers, figures, facts, but most importantly, something of value. Data can help us tell that story. It's an art and a science, as I always say. If you look at the classical definition of social media analytics, the science and art of extracting value from data. Data without a story, meaningless. You can't really do much without a story. A lot of people are great at churning numbers and crunching numbers and coming up with figures, but they do not know how to tell a proper story. This graphic pretty much sums up the purpose of my talk today. So this is the data value chain. You collect data, you publish data, and then you influence behavior, and that has an impact. You change behavior, but there is this yellow feedback loop that's constant in the whole process. You're constantly updating and improving for the better, and that's very important. And if I can sum it in one thing, asking the right questions is the key. You have the power of data you can harness it pretty much with all the tools available, but if you do not ask the right questions, it's just a waste of time. So we agree that data really, as in the words of LinkedIn CEO, Jeff, he said that data really powers everything that we do. Agreed or not? Does data really power everything we do? It's debatable, right? But that debate should happen where? On Twitter. Use the hashtag. Okay, I'll give you some examples from the field of journalism. Media outlets, newspapers are today competing on analytics. And that's a new reality in the new world we live in. According to Pew, nearly half of Americans get their news through Facebook. They may not trust a lot of news that they get from social media, but they still, just because they're on it all the time. And that's something we have to instill in the younger generation as well. There has to be a time for everything. You can't just be on social media all the time. And this is me telling you, a social media scholar. So Facebook being the dominant platform here, CNN breaking news, 54.2 million Twitter followers. But this is an interesting quote. A friend of mine who published this article, Edson Tandok, he said journalism is changing. And interesting title of the study was Journalism is Twerking. It's changing because of quantifiable and immediate feedback from the audience. So in the newsrooms, gatekeepers of information, they're looking at data and trying to understand it is the new reality of how we can get the right news at the right time for the maximum possible engagement so that people see it and look at our content and click on it. You talk about sports. Global professional sports, it's worth $90 billion. It's a big industry. Real Madrid fans, by the way, are 109 million on Facebook alone. And this is just one of those examples. If you look at it at a smaller micro level, one of our OU studies helped us understand that 1 in 5 student athletes use social media for networking and career-related connections. So it's big in sports as well, besides journalism. And then we move on to one interesting study that we did as part of our Smart Lab. My team at the Smart Lab, we harvested 80,000 tweets to understand the Zika virus, especially around the Rio Olympics that were taking place in Brazil in 2016. There was so much media hype that we were wondering that this Olympic is going to get canceled just because there was so much scare that, you might, how many of you remember this picture? The small baby head. It was scary. It was very heartbreaking at the same time, but when you saw that picture, the impression generated was that the Olympics are not safe and this is going to happen to anyone who goes there. But what did we learn from our data? Data told us that that wasn't really the case. Yes, health was a concern, but from the analyzed tweets, sentiment was neutral, mostly positive, and not that negative. It was 13%. There is some degree of negativity, but people were concerned about other stuff, like the readiness of the Olympic facilities. So there was way more media hype than there should have been, in our opinion, and this is what we found. Sports enthusiasts, media organizations, and journalists, they were the most active tweeters. You look at the world of business, and we have countless examples of how you should not be only listening, but engaging with your audiences to build what? Relationships. If you do not build relationships, it is also not effective engagement. So we track sentiments, mentions. These are one of the few important things. Interactions. To do what? Manage reputations, but at the end of the day, derive value and compete in this increasingly competitive world. One example of a social network diagram that one of my colleagues, Ika, and this is for the Indonesian government, we looked at the Facebook pages of the Ministry of Health of the government of Indonesia, and we found, firstly, about veracity, there were so many people who were fake posters. But the other thing we found was that there are social media buzzers. They just, for money, they tweet stuff. And how do we deal with this new reality? There was criticism, as you can see in orange, and then there was support, as you can see in blue. We saw the communities that were really active on social media surrounding the Ministry of Health. And this brings me to what? All these examples converge on a very important point, and the key word here is complacency. We cannot live in this old world, in the same old thinking of ways of doing things. A lot of businesses, organizations, entities have to move forward. They have to realize that there is a price for complacency. What do we mean by that? I'm going to talk about the positive side. You have wonderful examples. UPS thrives on data and analytics. They're flexible. They utilize their capabilities to the best of their advantage. They're efficient. They even built a system called Orion for optimizing logistics. They made better decisions. Okay, let's get to the world of entertainment. Let the bird move. So use this hashtag, mention it, And I have a question for all of you. And the question is, who has watched content on Netflix? You can raise your hand first in the last week. Awesome, that's going to be a lot of activity. So you need to tweet to me using that hashtag, what was it that you watched? What was your favorite show? On Netflix. We have a lot of Netflix fans. We have a little Netflix fan over there. Awesome. I'm sure you watched what? What did you watch? All right? Okay, so let's look at the Netflix example. The Netflix, we love Netflix. It's a lot of good entertainment. But how many of you use Blockbuster videos? Remember the VHS tapes? They're no more. Blockbuster paid the ultimate price for complacency. They started off so strong, and they went bankrupt around 2010. Netflix started off here, and today, it's a global company with $152.7 billion of worth or market capitalization. This is the analytics competitive advantage that I'm talking about. Their main advantage is what? Where do you get those movies? Where do you get those TV shows? Online, right? In the cloud. How do they get their analytics advantage? They invested in something called Cinematch. You'll be surprised to know that for every person, there's a personalized web page that tells you your unique taste based on they have thousands of ratings per second, custom movie reviews, website behavior, and it's tailored to each and every person. Now that's awesome, because that's how they can expand, and that's how they can get value out of their data. What else do? They even engage in predictive analytics in marketing. So do you know that their content production decisions are based on 70,000 movie and TV show attributes? And there's more. 10 different trailers for each customer. Depending on your taste and your personality and what you like, there are 10 different trailers that match you. So this is the analytics advantage. This is how you can get value from it. House of Cards, 3 million customers globally they gained just from this show. And now it is actually even shaking Hollywood. Netflix is a company that is also producing its content now. And this gave them a lot of traction. Now, web facilitates engagement in a social sense. You can comment on Facebook. You can favorite something on Twitter. You can like or even dislike on YouTube, if I look at these 3 major giants, right? You can share content. This is what we have to measure at a basic level. But this is just part of half or even less than close to 20% of active engagement. A lot of data, as I said in my beginning of my presentation, is going to you. When you're not using your cell phone or smartphones, data is being generated. Have you noticed how when you're driving, it tells you you're driving, so you can't use your phone? All right? So there are a lot of sensors that are sending that data. So taking the right metrics and using it to your advantage is what we need. As I said, yes, organizations are struggling to understand what they need to do. And here's a very important example. In one of the latest Harvard Business Review articles, and it was asked, can you tell what your strategy is? Do you know what your strategy is? What are your goals? What do you want to do? And guess what we found? It was surprising, actually, mind-boggling, really. Most executives cannot articulate their objectives. Scope, advantage of their business in a simple statement. And what does that mean? If they can't, nobody else can. They're at the heart of all that. And that translates into analytics so much, because if we do not know what we want to measure, if we do not know our questions, how are we going to extract this volume of data and get the value out of it? So I'm going to move on towards an important part of my presentation. So I started off with data collection, analysis, but I'm going to talk about something very important for that storytelling. It's visualizing that data. We're human beings. We are visual beings, right? We love to see things. Seeing is believing. So we form a mental image for everything we do, right? We try to gain insights. We try to amplify cognition of some graphic like this one. Because as human beings, we have this visual perception that we need to capitalize on, right? So data visualization is a broad field. It can be as basic as coming up with an effective bar chart or a pie chart, right? We make that. Or it can be advanced as using Tableau to come up with sophisticated visualizations, right? So that we can tell a better story. But what are we doing in all this process? I want you all to pay attention to that. It's the human visual perception that we are trying to capitalize on. And the question, very important question, think about how do we know what we know? Think of any topic. How do we know what a car looks like? And the answer is we know what a car looks like. But what is the first time? Go back in time. When we heard of the car as a child maybe, how did you know what a car is? It's in our a picture in our head, right? We can get back to a picture in our head. But where do those thoughts come from? They're ideas that come to our mind, and it's going to bring me to this interesting question, which is, how many of you have watched the movie Inception? One of my favorite movies. Inception. Anybody remembers what Inception was? Okay, so tweet about it. If you have watched it, let me know. Who was your favorite character, if you remember? Or whatever you remember of that movie. Tweet about it. I'll give you a few seconds. Inception. Okay. All right, you're not allowed to Google it, or the bird moved now. All right, so we know that thoughts are seeds. These are words from that movie, thoughts are seeds. What kind of seeds? And I quote, what's the most resilient parasite? An idea. A single idea can change the world. A human mind can build cities. That's what happened, right? The human mind. It was all about the human mind. It's the most amazing organ in our body, right? That consumes the most amount of energy, really. As far as I know. I'm not a scientist, but. So an idea can transform the world. How do you get that idea is the art. And I really feel, and I strongly feel that data visualization relates to this concept very much. So your thoughts create your reality. And something along those lines, because I'm in the professor and there are students here, if you can imagine it, you can do it. There's nothing that's impossible. If you can imagine something that I want to be this, or I want to do this someday, you can do it. But if you do not imagine it, if you don't even plan for it, you know what the answer is, right? So through information visualizations, through our ideas, we can make large data sets coherent. So for example, when I harvest some data, something starts coming to my mind. It's a process that kicks in, and I start wondering, how am I going to show this? What are the questions that can emerge from this, obviously? How can this value be derived from this data to tell an effective story? I can make visual comparisons from that. I can tell stories from that data. Extracting value requires narrative, visuals, and data. You cannot have one all alone. You have to have this you have to have them juxtaposed in such a way that you can derive change at the end. Change is very important. That feedback is very important. So effective design is what it boils down to, right? Does it boil down to effective design or not? Example, Rox was talking about flu vaccine. I'm going to tell you about some other vaccine related to measles. It's a simple chart that tells a very important story. I do not have to show the numbers. I do not have to show anything. All I have to ask you is pay attention to this. So these are all the US states that had measles in 1930. Till 1960, when vaccines were introduced, measles got wiped out. That's what I'm talking about. This is the data visualization. This is a picture speaking 1,000 words without going too much into that detail. It's convincing, it's powerful. It tells us through evidence that this is what happened when measles vaccine was introduced. How drastically it changed it. It took away all the color from there. Another example, anybody can use Google Fusion Tables. It's a freely available product from Google. This is a newspaper map, and actually there's a website, I think newspapermap.com. You can go there and see all the newspapers in the world, and you can look at national newspapers, you can look at local newspapers. For journalists, this is a treasure trove of information. A spreadsheet was visualized in this format that makes so much more sense. It's so much more exciting. Question again. So what do you think? So midterms are right around the corner. I hope everybody has registered to vote. You must vote if you've seen the General Assembly stuff. Midterm 2018, what are Americans interested in? What do you think Americans are interested in for the elections? Keywords, hashtags. Name a few. Is it immigration? Is it health? Health, immigration, jobs, economy. Let's tweet those words and we'll find out what it is. I'll give you an answer in a couple of seconds. So once you've done that, we can go ahead and find out. Okay?
Newspaper website you talked about?
I can get that. Back to it. I want to give you the right address. Okay, so people are interested in, and you said it rightly, they're interested in healthcare. Healthcare is a big agenda item. So, how many of you know what Google Trends is? Google Trends. Has anybody used Google Trends? If you go to Google Trends, you can see this beautiful visualization telling you this is number one. These are the things Americans have been searching for around the last week or so. Healthcare, immigration, social security, minimum wage. These are the topics. And it's also interesting to see how things change. What do you think changes that? News media, reports, some new happenings. They can change that agenda overnight. Okay? Let's come to the state of Ohio. Narrow it down. What topics are Ohioans interested in? What do you think? Again, healthcare. It's pretty much like national. Immigration, tariffs, abortion, and guns. Not many people are interested in that over here. But if you look at Athens County, this is a picture that emerges. Healthcare is the biggest thing that people are searching for. But I have a question for you. Is this is what people are searching for? This is what data is telling us. Is this also what the politicians are discussing? Is healthcare one of the top priority in this country or not? How do we deal with this situation? Data really tells us a story. How can we get value from this information? That's the question. Okay, I've reached pretty much towards the end of my presentation, and I'm going to ask you this question again. Let the bird move first. What were most people tweeting about? What do you think? I'll give you an answer. Just give me a minute to come up with that answer, because I have an analysis of my own that I need to show you and show you the power of analytics. What do you think people tweeted about? Don't go and look at the feed for Twitter and try to guess. I'll give you an exact answer. So just bear with me for a minute.
Do you want us to respond, or you wait to pop up?
You can respond while I pull it up.
We think, so it's my classes here, we think that people tweeted about specific words that you said, like stories told with pictures and graphs.
Okay, any specific word that you think really popped up more than others?
No, we're thinking like value, velocity, veracity, like, you know, issues
Okay.
such as that.
That's true. That you're right. So data was one of the biggest categories. People also tweeted about entertainment. So within data, what were they interested in? Story, value, immigration, health, big data, I understand. Analytics, people talked about. This is live, yes. Entertainment, people talked about Netflix. Obviously, those were the questions that I asked. Inception, Blockbuster. So people kind of really got interested in Blockbuster. That's interesting. Within Inception, these were some of the tweets that mentioned the word Inception. Some have not watched the movie, but they might watch it now. This is a very basic network chart emerging for this presentation, and we have these people actually tweeting about it. So who's that? Okay, so people have also mentioned Ohio University in this Twitter trivia. And somehow I'm not getting the updated report here, but I will pull up whatever I have. So tell me if you recognize a name here. So these are the top posters. Anybody here from that Twitter handle? Congratulations. Yes. You tweeted, right?
Yes, I'm the third one.
You're the third one. Anybody else in that list? I have another gift card. This is interesting. Oh, maybe. So that could be it. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll rerun another analysis, and I can, if you feel that you've tweeted a lot, just let me know, and I can send out that gift card. So I have it with me. All right, thank you very much. This was a wonderful audience. Oh, yeah. I'm open for questions, I'm being told. So any questions if you have? Yes.
Yeah, okay. I went to Walmart today, and my phone told me that I was in Walmart, sent me a message and started showing me some of the things I should buy. And my question is, how can we, the clients, take advantage of this data? Because companies are taking advantage of our data,
Right.
and they are making money off us. So how do we, the clients, take advantage of this data and get something out of it as well?
You mentioned something very interesting. So I will repeat the question before I answer it. A friend of ours asked, he went to Walmart, and then he started getting messages for some things that are on sale, is that right? And encouraging him to buy them. And this is the kind of world we live in. So how can we, as customers, take advantage of that situation instead of the companies running after our money, right? Great question. You can use any of those tools to your advantage to see what are the best prices. So what are customers concerned about? Prices. We want the best, lowest prices. If we can go online and try to see what is trending and whatever is available at the best possible price, there are tons of apps, there are tons of applications that you can use to get that answer. You cannot escape it. If I can add something to it, this is when this started happening, such things, it happens to me as well. So when I'm somewhere, I Google something and I see an ad on Facebook, right? You might have noticed that. How do we deal with this situation? You cannot run away from it. I mean, I'm not the person who's going to tell you, just block social media accounts and live a life in the woods. No. You have to live in this environment. Privacy is a concern, and the privacy laws are not as strict as they could be in certain European countries. It's a fact here. What you can do is use it to your advantage by seeing how you can get the best prices and by seeing how you can get the best products. And I think that pretty much sums it up. Knowing where to go, knowing where to look, asking the right questions, that's pretty much what it boils down to. Hope I answered to your question.
You can turn off your location. So
Well, there you have it. That's a great example.
I
Yeah.
wanted to say something about privacy, and each social media app has different privacy policies. Some are more, basically they invade everything that you have on your phone. So you need to just be aware of what you're signing and not to say, I agree at the end of, at the end of the app that you're downloading. So we learned that in another class where we actually have to look at everything that they're actually getting into. So it's not just the data that's just like for advertisement and
Mhm.
buying things. It's deeper than that, and that's what's kind of scary now in the social media world.
I absolutely agree. Any other questions? Yes.
Well, coming back to your point, I don't want just the lowest price item because it's probably going to be junk.
Mhm.
So I'm looking for a proper trade-off of price and quality. Now, what I can get off the web is on the price side is pretty reliable and it's pretty hard.
Mhm.
I know that's a true piece of data, but the quality side is much more difficult.
I agree.
It's very, very difficult to assess what the quality is for reviews, for example,
Okay.
because there's a lot of fake and junk data there. So that's kind of an interesting dichotomy to me. I'm trying to weigh those two things. One's hard, the other is not.
So our friend has asked another very interesting question. Price is something we can easily try to figure out what the lowest price is. But the challenge of today is the veracity of information in terms of reviews. Are reviews even honest reviews or not? So that's a challenge that we're facing. And that's the challenge everybody's facing. There was a time before I bought anything, even if I didn't buy it from Amazon, I would read the Amazon reviews to get an idea of something is true or not. But now the feeling that's emerging, and I don't know if it's only me, is that even the Amazon reviews are not very true. So there could be a lot of people who are manipulating the sentiment around those reviews or the kind of reviews that show up. And here's my strategy for dealing with this, if that's what you're looking for. I do not only look at reviews on one site, I try to scour the web for the maximum possible reviews, but then there's another thing that I look at. If there's a new product, I seldom buy it. I do not tend to trust it right away. If there's something more established with at least 1,000 reviews, the larger the number of reviews, the lesser likelihood of that being manipulated. And that's not the best answer, to be honest. Liz, I agree.
In this talk, you talk about data. And what tools do you use for data visualization? Do you have any solution for describing data scientists?
Okay, so the question asked is that I talked about data in my talk. Are there any specific tools that aspiring data scientists can employ? Yes, there are lots of tools that I teach in the social media analytics research team lab here in the Scripps Hall, and you're welcome to visit. We can talk about those tools. But for example, the one that I used here, it's a very basic tool to teach social media analytics at a very basic level, and it's called Netlytic. So if you want to play around with what social media analytics is, you can do a basic text analysis, a network analysis, and so on. So sentiment is part of that as well. You can employ other techniques. If you're interested in learning more, you can use NodeXL to look at the network structures. It's a freely available tool, at least a basic version. You can visualize data using Tableau, as I mentioned in my talk. You can gather data by learning a little bit of R. So if you're really interested in this, R is a programming language that can help you learn about how you can gather data, clean data, visualize data even. R and Python are the two languages I would recommend. There is somewhat of a learning curve there, but it's not as steep as many people think it to be. Scripps Hall, right there. Yes.
Let me ask, so given your field of research, do you see universities coming up with dedicated personnel who will soon be able to really look at the tweets and stuff that come out of a university so that we could perhaps better put our brand and what we're known for on them? Do you see anything in that? Because it would take dedicated people to do that. Do you see that being a future of how we're dealing with some of the social media for universities and branding and things such as that?
So if I understand your question, you asked about how universities and educational institutions can use social media and the data generated from that to brand themselves better,
Themselves and let
market.
them be better known for specific programs
So there are a few elements within this branding and marketing for education institutions. One is student recruitment. The other is talking about the research that is done in that university. And these are the kind of things that are, for example, as far as I know, the University External Relations and Marketing does a good job at that. There are already universities around the world that are actively employing analytics techniques to make themselves more visible. Yes, there's always room for improvement, and that's a continuous process, as I also talked about in that feedback loop. And I believe that must be happening at some level, even at OU. So as far as I know. Thank you. Yes?
So what are some of the projects that you're contemplating now with your students in the Smart Lab?
Okay. So I've been asked about some of the projects that we are contemplating or currently having in our Smart Lab. The projects in the Smart Lab are as diverse as our student body. In the whole Scripps College of Communication, we have the School of Media Arts and Studies, School of Journalism, we have Viscom and Telecommunications, or IT. So many things to explore. And that's what makes it very exciting in our lab, because we are willing and happy to work with anybody who is interested in exploring their particular research topics, such as health. We're looking at government social media, we're looking at sports, we're looking at the spread of misinformation. This is one of the latest projects that we're working on. How do we find out fake followers? How do we find out if the followers or the posts that we see are just junk being generated not only by real people but by bots? So this is one of the topics of interest that we have. We're also exploring media literacy issues. So from my background, my research has been looking into digital divide. One of our latest projects looks at the digital divide in rural Appalachia. So the region that we're in, media literacy and access to information and how we can explore those things takes a very important center stage, especially when you look at it in the background of health considerations. The opioid crisis, that's something we'd love to explore in future, and so on. Yes.
How do you share your information?
Sorry?
Share your information with the big companies. Is there a consolidated area where it all goes? Where does your research go?
Oh, that's a great question. So where does the research go? We make it a point that we become visible in the conferences that are related to social media, journalism, media and communication, such as the AHNC, ICA, International Communication Association, but increasingly the more informatics-related conferences such as CHI. So conferences are a very big part of it. But then we move ahead and we try to publish it in international journals as much as possible so that our research gets visibility.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Just one more question. Does anybody have questions? All right. Well, if not, then we're just going to thank.
Thank you very much.